Japan starts releasing treated wastewater from the crippled Fukushima nuclear plant into the sea. The court extends an interim injunction against public housing construction at Fanling Golf Course. And in South Africa, 6 countries are invited to join the BRICS group. Hello and welcome to TVB News. Japan started releasing treated radioactive water from the tsunami-wrecked Fukushima nuclear power plant into the Pacific Ocean at midday Hong Kong time today. In South Korea, at least 14 protesters were arrested as they entered a building housing the Japanese embassy in Seoul. And China announced an immediate blanket ban on all seafood imports from Japan. Tracy Furness has more.
The operators of the crippled Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant, Tokyo Electric Power Company or TEPCO, said they had started discharging wastewater from the plant into the Pacific Ocean. TEPCO's engineering company manager, Junichi Matsumoto, said the treated water was released at 1 p.m. Japan Standard Time. We are planning to release the water continuously 24/7 over the period of 17 days. If we see any failures in our system, we will halt the release, he said. Locals of the area protest in front of the Fukushima prefectural office building Wednesday. They shouted, "Do not harm the Earth's environment. Do not forget the suffering caused by Fukushima." And in Seoul today, South Korean police arrested at least 14 college students who stormed a building that houses the Japanese embassy. The group made it to the 8th floor of the building where the embassy is located and hung banners condemning the release of wastewater into the ocean. Police officers were seen dragging protesters out of the building and bundling them into a bus. Meanwhile, China announced a ban on the imports of all aquatic products from Japan today. This as Beijing residents voiced their concerns about the release of the first batch of contaminated water. Connie Yo said, "This incident won't really affect what we think of the Japanese people, but we are very disappointed at the Japanese government." And Lai On-dong said, "Previously, I didn't feel anything that was particularly bad about Japan, but this incident has affected my impressions of Japan." Tokyo maintains the water release is safe, noting the Atomic Energy Agency had concluded that the impact on people and the environment was negligible. Tracy Furness, TVB News.
Here in Hong Kong, the government has banned the import of aquatic products from 9 Japanese prefectures and Tokyo metropolis starting today. Some residents say they will stop purchasing seafood in the short term. Sharon Tang has more.
With immediate effect, aquatic products from regions such as Tokyo and Fukushima are banned from coming into the city. The Center for Food Safety will perform comprehensive radiation testing on other aquatic products from Japan. The operator of a Japanese restaurant said many businesses have turned to Hokkaido for food supplies. She said it's inevitable that competition will intensify and prices are expected to shoot up by about 30%. At the Barrington Road Market in Causeway Bay, some residents expressed concerns over local seafood. This woman said she'll stop having seafood in the short term as she's not sure where the radioactive water will spread to. This woman, meanwhile, said she'll opt for healthier products like beef from Australia. In 2021, Tsinghua University conducted research simulating the spread of radioactive water from Fukushima. Results show that the water could reach Chinese coastal waters 8 months after its release and the North American coast in about 1,200 days. The discharge plan is set to continue in the next 30 years. According to Tokyo Electric Power Company, or TEPCO, most of the radioactive elements will be filtered through the advanced liquid processing system. What's left is tritium, a radioactive isotype of hydrogen that is hard to separate. TEPCO will then dilute the treated water until tritium levels fall below regulatory limits before pumping it into the sea. Kenneth Leung, a City University academic who specializes in marine pollution, said the dilution cannot completely remove all radioactive substances. He reminds children, chronically ill patients, and pregnant women to avoid eating big fish that's higher up in the food chain. Meanwhile, some have suggested treating the radioactive water by evaporation, but an expert disagrees.
Is going to be in the air, perhaps in the upper layer of the atmosphere, but there's no guarantee there is no tritium that will penetrate some area where population are living in Japan, in China, South Korea.
As for suggestions to put the water underneath the ground, he said in certain situations such as earthquakes, leakage cannot be ruled out. Sharon Tang, TVB News.
The High Court has extended the interim injunction order against the government's plan to build public housing units on the Fanling Golf Course. The suspension will be in place until the court makes a decision over a judicial review filed by the Hong Kong Golf Club against the government's environmental impact assessment report on the golf course. Jackie Lin reports.
The government is poised to take back the 32 hectares of land from the Fanling Golf Course next week. Among them, 9 hectares will be used to build public housing. That's after the Environmental Protection Department conditionally accepted the golf course environmental impact assessment report. In a bid to overturn the report, the Hong Kong Golf Club filed a judicial review in the High Court last month. The case will be heard in May 2024. Today, another legal request from the golf club was granted by the court. An interim injunction order which temporarily suspends the government's housing project until the judicial review reaches a conclusion. In a written judgment, Judge Russell Coleman said the government promised not to proceed with their construction works on the 9.5 hectares of land, so the injunction order won't affect the housing plan, and the government is studying whether to reduce the number of housing units built based on the environmental assessment report. The golf club also said if the court doesn't issue the injunction order, it will severely affect the course's environment as well as its cultural heritage and areas of high ecological values. The judge added the inspection work by the Civil Engineering and Development Department should not be affected by the interim injunction, including their spatial and tree survey. This, as the department's review will not result in environmental damage to the golf course. It's worth noting the judge agrees it is arguably implicit if the technical studies concluded the public housing project could not viably be built at the golf site. There will be no reason to take back the land. With that, the court granted an interim injunction order which will be in place until the result of the golf club's judicial review is out. Jackie Lin, TVB News.
The BRICS group of nations has decided to invite 6 countries, Argentina, Egypt, Iran, Ethiopia, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates, to become new members of the bloc. The move was announced by South African President Cyril Ramaphosa on the last day of the group's 3-day summit in Johannesburg. President Xi Jinping heralded the decision, saying it will inject new vitality into the group's cooperation mechanism. Daniel Rao tells us more.
The debate over expanding the BRICS bloc, comprising Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa, has topped the agenda at a 3-day summit in Johannesburg. The summit draws to a close today. While all BRICS members have publicly expressed support for expanding the group, there were divisions among the leaders over the number of new members and how quickly they should be admitted. But after 2 days of talks, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa announced the 5 current members have agreed to expand the bloc and that the idea of doing so had been worked on for over a year.
We have decided to invite the Argentine Republic, the Arab Republic of Egypt, the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, the Islamic Republic of Iran, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates to become full members of BRICS. The membership will take effect from the 1st of January 2024.
President Xi Jinping said the expansion of BRICS will inject new vitality into the group's cooperation mechanism. President Xi added the expansion reflects the determination of BRICS nations to unite and cooperate with other developing countries. He stated it meets the expectations of the international community and serves the common interests of emerging markets and developing countries. She also said the BRICS members are all countries with great influence and shoulder important responsibilities for world peace and development. Russian President Vladimir Putin delivered a remote address congratulating the new members. This marks the second time that BRICS has decided to expand. The bloc was formed in 2009 by Brazil, Russia, India and China. South Africa was added in 2010. The BRICS bloc currently represents around 40% of the world's population and contributes more than a quarter of global GDP. Dan Orell, TV News.
Welcome back. An investigation continues after a deadly plane crash north of Moscow. A passenger list shows mercenary boss Yevgeny Prigozhin was among the 10 people on board, and there are no reports of survivors. The Wagner Group's website says Prigozhin is dead, though Russian government investigators have not confirmed this. David Garrett reports.
The flight was heading to St. Petersburg. Prigozhin's jet was an Embraer Legacy 600. The aircraft has a good safety record, one accident in 20 years, according to website International Aviation HQ. 62-year-old Prigozhin was once close to Russian President Vladimir Putin. An ex-convict turned caterer, he picked up lucrative Kremlin contracts and built his Wagner army that helped Russia in the 2014 annexation of Crimea and in the current war in Ukraine. But as the casualty count grew over there in recent months, he became angry with the Kremlin, ranting on social media. 2 months ago, he launched a coup. It failed. He took over a base in Rostov-on-Don, but his march on Moscow was aborted. Putin called it treachery and a stab in the back, although later dropped criminal charges. The president has not commented on the crash. Investigators were quick to cordon off the area last night. Some Russian experts think the security service, the FSB, are involved.
To see, this dramatic action taken sort of indicates they thought he was a threat, right? And they don't want that threat any longer. And so I think it's also a broader message to elites that, don't challenge me.
US President Joe Biden said he did not have all the information but would not rule out Kremlin involvement.
I don't know for a fact what happened, but I'm not surprised.
Do you believe?
There's not much that happens when Russia is not behind, but I don't know enough to know the answer.
Mourners brought flowers and candles to a memorial outside Wagner's office building in St. Petersburg. At the site of the crash, the investigation continues. There is speculation across Russia and the world about what may have happened to Prigozhin, his men and the crew, and what lies behind it. David Garrett, TVB News.
The Hong Kong e-toll system will be implemented at the Eastern Harbour Crossing starting at 5 a.m. this Sunday. The Eastern Harbour Crossing will be the last of the city's 3 cross-harbour tunnels to have the free-flow tolling service. To facilitate the transition, special traffic arrangements will be in place at the start of Sunday. Its tunnel lanes going both directions will be closed between 4 and 5 a.m. 3 cross-harbour bus routes will be diverted to the cross-harbour tunnel. Police are investigating 2 deaths, a murder and a suicide in So Wan Shan public housing block. It's believed the deceased in the cases were neighbors who had arguments over noise complaints. Officers found an axe, a hiking pole, and an electrical extension board in one of the housing units involved in the deaths. Police received a report at 4 p.m. yesterday and later found an 85-year-old woman lying in the corridor with 9 wounds about 10 centimeters long on her head and neck. Initial investigation shows she was attacked by someone. Officers will try to find out whether the axe had anything to do with her death. Living right below the woman's flat was a 66-year-old man who killed himself. Both of them were certified dead at the hospital. Initial investigation shows the 2 were neighbors who had arguments over noise complaints yesterday and multiple times before. A survey has found that many workers still suffered from heat-related illness despite the government's guidance notes. The survey was conducted by the Federation of Hong Kong and Kowloon labor unions. Outdoor employees and employers were asked about their perspectives on the effectiveness of the guidance notes on prevention of heat stroke at work warning since its introduction. About 30% of the workers said they had suffered heat illnesses during work. Mimo Singhai reports.
Hong Kong faces scorching heat during the summer, but for outdoor employees, working under extreme heat is particularly difficult. After the Labour Department introduced an updated version of its guidelines in May to help employers reduce the risk of heat stroke of employees, the HKFLU said there is room for improvement. The union surveyed about 100 outdoor workers and 40 employers in June. The result shows over half of the workers did not receive any breaks from their supervisors during hot weather. Meanwhile, over 90% of the employers said it is difficult to follow the guidelines because they affect work progress. Lam Jun Singh, the chairman of the HKFLU, who is also a lawmaker, said employers can do more to protect workers under the heat.
For example, they always do not know that their employees, which workload category are their employees belonging to, so that they will understand the rest time more easily. The Labour Department guideline can include the observatory extreme hot weather warning, but now the existing guideline only concern the heat index. We hope that the Labour Department can study whether we need a legislation.
The lawmaker added the Labour Department should also enhance their promotion work on heat stroke prevention. Mimo Singhai, TVB News.
At a press conference today, Executive Chairman of Television Broadcasts Limited, Thomas Hui, denied Rita's reports that he and Eric Chung, General Manager of Content Operations, are stepping down. Thomas Hui said both he and Sang, who is not in Hong Kong but appeared via video link, have no plans to leave the company. Hui said the rumors are false and it could affect the share price of the company, especially because they came shortly after the announcement of interim results. Hui said he will refer the matter to relevant law enforcement authorities. Bye for now.